Hey everybody, welcome back to the Engineered Angler. This week, as per the drawing, we're going to make what most people call a jerkbait, but what I typically call a twitch bait. And we're not just going to make any twitch bait or any jerkbait, we're going to make an enlarged copy of my absolute favorite lure of all time, Fat Belly. I designed this lure probably 6 years ago, and it's my absolute go-to lure anywhere, anytime. I've caught more fish with that lure than any other lure I've ever used, and more species than any other lure for sure. In fact, I had to write them down. In freshwater, I've caught bass, crappie, gar, pickerel, and unfortunately catfish. In saltwater, I've caught trout, redfish, flounder, mackerel, jack of a few types, cobia, tarpon, black bass, grouper, snapper, and unfortunately catfish. So I worked on this shape for a long time, believe it or not. As simple as this is, between the shape and the balance, I probably made a dozen iterations until I got a lure that will twitch really erratically. You can steady walk the dog with it under the water. You can swim it back and it'll have a nice serpentine swimming action, and you can give it a sweeping motion with the rod and it gives you a really hard thumping swim. This thing really can draw the fish, especially when I make one with a nice rattle in it. So when you look at this shape, it looks like a lot of other lures, but there are some subtle differences. Here's one in freshwater colors, and if you take a look, you can see the sweep to the narrow part of the tail happens kind of late in the lure. And the other key element is that if you take a look here, you can see the widest point, the thickest part of the lure, is right about at the middle of the lure. It's flat-sided, it's kind of blocky, and the other little subtle thing is that if you take a look at the cross section of this, you'll notice that it's slightly fatter at the belly. So let's get to it. Let me show you what I'm doing to make this a little bigger. So I took the lure and stuck it in my copier, and then I made some copies that were slightly larger. This one's about 25%, and then I kept going up until I got to the size I wanted, which is right at 30% greater than the original. And then using some spray adhesive, I just stuck it to the wood and then trimmed off the excess paper. And now I'm ready to go ahead and cut this out with the bandsaw. Let's get to it. Alright, so before I draw the contour looking down on the lure, I'm going to just mark out the center line. And that's just going to be where the widest part of my lure is. Even though it's going to be pretty flat-sided, it's going to come in with just a slow taper down and then round off here pretty abruptly. Alright, so this is a small enough amount of material that I can just remove all of it with the belt sander. So let's get out there. I think I've got it shaped as cleanly as I can. It's got some nice symmetry, and you can see that the belly is just a little fatter than the top, which is kind of backwards for most lures. Now I'm going to put in some details. First, the eye sockets. And now I want to draw in the lines for the gill plates that I'm going to go ahead and carve out. It'll be a simple carve.
Working with a simple box cutter, I start the carving by just cutting a vertical slot or cut down to set the depth of what I'm going to actually carve. And then I'll trim back right up against that line. Remove material so that I can get the depth. And I'll try to get it a little deeper right down at the bottom. It looks a little more natural. And I'll work all the way around, giving it a slight reduction in material. And then it's just a matter of sanding with a sanding board to get everything smoothed out.
Alright, so I'm pretty happy with the carving. It's a simple carving and it seems like maybe it's just for looks, but it isn't. Really, I carved a sort of heavy, simple gill plate on the original with the intention of getting this thing to have a lot of turbulent water flowing across it to allow it to jerk around real easy and swim with a nice motion. So that's the theory. It worked pretty well on the original. Hopefully it'll scale up and still work. So I'm going to make some screw eyes, and I'm just using this stainless steel leader wire. It's 174 pound, and I find it easy to work with and strong enough for just about any lure. And I'm going to use these safety wire twist pliers to get these eyes twisted in. And if you're interested in getting the stuff that you see me using, I try to find good links for it on Amazon, and I put it in my Amazon store. There's a link for that store in the description. Just scroll down and check it out. Alright, so I've done everything I'm going to do to the body, so it's time to weigh it so I can figure out how much weight to put in it. Now, this lure is intended to be a slow sinking sort of a countdown lure, so I can cast it out there, count it down to the depth I want it, and then twitch it back or reel it back or however I want to retrieve it. So I need to weigh it first so I can calculate what the volume is, and then I can calculate what the weight should be. 9.92 grams, okay? And as usual, I've taken a sample of the wood and calculated the density of the wood just by getting the volume of this little block, weighing it, and then doing the division. And I get 0.363 grams per cubic centimeter. So I'll divide the weight of the lure by the density of the wood. And so the lure needs to weigh 27 grams just to be neutrally buoyant. Now I want it to sink, so I'm going to add about 10% to that, and it comes out to almost exactly 30 grams. So that's what we're going to shoot for, 30 grams for this lure. That means 30 grams with everything in it and on it. I've got the lure prepped with the hook eyes inserted, not glued yet, and I need to weigh the added weight. So those are the hooks and the split ring, and here's what I'm going to need to add to get up to about 30 and a little bit. So 30.1516, that should do it. That should give me a lure that sinks slowly. And because I want the lure to be weighted slightly tail down, not too much, but a little bit tail down, I'm going to go ahead and put the big one just in front of the hook eye, and then the two smaller split shots just behind it. This is a monster hole. I hate having to drill big holes on a lure I just finished carving. That should have that first one. Now I need to drill the other two holes. Certainly quite a bit of holes drilled into this thing. And I'm just going to use some sawdust and some UV resin to fill it all in, and then I'll sand it back. Alright, so I've got this thing sanded down pretty nicely. It's smooth. The contour of the belly is still nicely intact, and I hate sanding, but you got to do what you got to do. The next step is going to be to give this thing the first clear coat. Let's go ahead and throw it back on the scale and see if I still have my 30 grams. There it is, 30.14, perfect. I'm just going to do a very, very thin coat just to seal the wood and cover up any little minor defects so the paint doesn't pick it up. All right, it's a new day and it's a little bit cloudy out there. Hopefully it'll clear up. We'll get some sunshine so we can put this thing in the water and get some decent shots. But now that we get a clear coat on here, and it's just a thin protective clear coat, gives us a nice surface to paint on and protects it from the water, because we're gonna throw it in the tank right now and see how my calculations went. I should be able to drop it in and it should sink a little bit and then float very slowly up. We'll see. Uh-oh. Oh no, it's coming back up. A little more head down than I wanted, but I think when we hang the tail on it, it'll be perfect. All right, that worked. All right, so we're ready to paint. My plan is to paint it a speckled perch color. So there's silver, there's green in there, there's a little bit of blue, there's black. So let's give it a shot. Pretty happy with that eye. I'm gonna go ahead and give this thing a couple of coats of the polyacrylic and we'll be ready to give it the first clear coat. Alright, so sometimes when I'm really in a hurry, I'll put my lures in my little easy bake oven here. I'll set it to about 125 and I double check these temperatures with a good thermometer, and then I'll put it in there for about 30 minutes, and that should give it plenty of time to get good and set. It's always amazing to me how much a clear coat really makes a paint job just really pop. Alright, that looks pretty nice. Alright, and now I get to go mow the lawn. Alright, here we are. We're at Rodman Dam. I didn't want to go to Lake Santa Fe. I felt like the water clarity was a little better here, and I think I got lucky. Let me give you a closer look at the finished product here in the sun. I think it came out really cool. Alright, let's see how it looks. Let's try first walk the dog. Let's see what it looks like when you just twitch it and jerk it.
Let's see how it swims on a steady retrieve. And here's with a hard sweep of the rod tip. Let's see it in slow motion. It swims really nice all the way back. Alright, I'm pretty happy with the way this thing is actually moving. Now I just want to fish. No. No. I lost the lure. Can't believe it. My quick clip failed. That's the first time that's ever happened. Oh well. See you guys next Friday, I guess. I'm down a lure.
Color. My plan is to paint it a speckled patch. Son of a. My plan is to. I don't know what my plan is.